I had always thought love stories came with some kind of warning, some grand sign in the sky, or at least the slow buildup of anticipation. But nothing prepared me for the way she walked into my life. It was an ordinary Thursday evening at the cafe I often escaped to after work, a place filled with chatter, the smell of roasted coffee beans, and soft indie music floating through the air. I was halfway through my laptop screen when I saw her. She wasn't extraordinary in the conventional sense, but something about her stopped me mid-thought. A woman in her mid-30s, poised yet restless, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and eyes that carried secrets. She wore a wedding ring that glinted under the dim light, and I thought to myself, she's unavailable. Off limits. End of story. Except, it wasn't the end. She caught me staring. Instead of looking away, she held my gaze, just for a second too long. It was the kind of look that sends a shiver up your spine, the kind that makes you question if you imagined it. She smiled faintly, and something in me stirred. Over the next few weeks, she kept appearing. Always at the same cafe, always around the same time. Sometimes she read a book, other times she worked on her phone. We started exchanging small smiles, the kind that linger like unspoken conversations. Finally, one evening, fate, or maybe courage, pushed me to say hello. "Looks like we share the same taste in coffee," I said, gesturing at her cup. Her lips curved into a smile that was both polite and mischievous. "Or maybe in hiding places," she replied softly. Her voice was low, intimate, like it was meant only for me. That was the moment the spark became undeniable. We talked for hours that night, about books, travels, dreams, and disappointments. She never mentioned her husband, though her wedding ring was impossible to ignore. And yet, when she leaned forward, her hand brushing mine on the table, my heart raced in a way I couldn't control. I told myself it was just harmless attraction, a fleeting thrill. But when she looked into my eyes and whispered, "I don't know why it feels so easy to talk to you," I knew this was the beginning of something neither of us had planned. After that first night of conversation, it became impossible to ignore her presence. Every time I walked into the cafe, my eyes instinctively searched for her, and almost always, she was there, as though waiting for me. We fell into a rhythm that neither of us dared to name, casual meetings, soft laughter, eyes lingering longer than they should. Her name was Elena. The way she said it made me want to taste it, to whisper it when no one else could hear. She told me about her love for painting, how she hadn't picked up a brush in years because life got too practical, too busy. I told her about my writing, how I used words to survive the loneliness I rarely admitted to. Somewhere between her confessions and mine, an invisible thread began to pull us closer. But there was always the ring. The reminder. The invisible wall between us. One evening, when rain tapped against the cafe windows, she arrived looking flustered. Drops of water clung to her hair, her blouse slightly damp from the storm. I offered her my scarf, draping it around her shoulders. Our hands touched, lingered, and something shifted in the air. The silence between us grew thick, heavy with the things we hadn't said. "Elena," I whispered, more to test the sound of her name than to ask anything. She looked at me, her eyes dark with something unspoken. "This, whatever this is, we shouldn't," her voice faltered, betraying her own doubt. I could have pulled back then, spared us both the complication. But instead, I leaned in just enough for her to feel my warmth. "Then why does it feel like we already have?" I murmured. Her breath caught. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of us, the rain, the cafe, the quiet thrum of hearts beating too fast. She didn't kiss me, but she didn't move away either. Her wedding ring glimmered between us like a warning, but her eyes begged for something real. That night, when we finally parted, she slipped her scarf back into my hands. Our fingers brushed, and she whispered, "I think about you when I shouldn't." I didn't sleep. I replayed her words, her touch, her confession. I knew I was standing at the edge of something dangerous, something that could unravel her world and complicate mine. But desire is not logical. It doesn't ask permission. It just grows, wild, reckless, unstoppable. And deep inside, I knew the line between us had already blurred. The next week felt unbearable. Every day I told myself I should stay away from the cafe, that distance would protect us both. But my body betrayed me. I kept going back, drawn like a moth to the flame. And every time, Elena was there, waiting, though she never admitted it out loud. One evening, the cafe was unusually quiet. The barista was closing early, leaving just the two of us at the corner table. I could sense Elena's restlessness, the way her hands fidgeted with her cup, the way she kept glancing at me as if searching for courage. Finally, she broke the silence. "I don't know how to explain this," she whispered, staring at the steam curling from her drink. "I've been married for years. I thought I knew myself. But then, you happened." Her words felt like both a confession and a plea. My heart pounded, torn between relief and guilt. "Elena," I started, but she shook her head, eyes shimmering. "No, let me say it. I didn't plan this. I didn't plan you. But when I'm with you, I feel seen. Alive. Like the person I used to be before I forgot myself in someone else's life." I reached for her hand, slowly, giving her the chance to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers trembled, but they curled into mine as though they had been waiting. The warmth of her skin, the softness of her touch, it was all I needed to know this wasn't just one-sided. "Elena," I whispered, leaning closer, "I feel it too." Her lips parted slightly, her breath quickening. The tension between us was electric, alive, undeniable. For a moment, I thought she would kiss me. But instead, she pulled back, closing her eyes as if fighting herself. "I can't," she said softly, almost painfully. "I want to, but I can't." I nodded, even though my heart ached. "I understand." We sat in silence, hands still entwined, both knowing the truth we were too afraid to act on. When she finally left that night, she pressed my hand to her cheek, closing her eyes for just a second. It was the most intimate, tender moment of my life, and somehow more powerful than a kiss. Walking home, the cool night air couldn't cool the fire burning inside me. I knew what we shared was forbidden, complicated, maybe even impossible. But I also knew I couldn't walk away. Because love doesn't care about rules or rings. It only cares about the pull between two hearts. And Elena's heart had already found its way into mine. For days after her confession, I felt like I was floating in a haze. Every text alert, every ring of my phone made me wonder if it was her. And then, one evening, it was. "Are you free tonight?" her message read. Simple. Direct. But my heart raced as though she had confessed everything again. She didn't want to meet at the cafe. Instead, she invited me to her art studio, a small space she had rented years ago and barely used. When I arrived, the place smelled faintly of turpentine and dust, canvases stacked against the walls, brushes untouched on a shelf. She stood by the window, bathed in the soft glow of the city lights. "I haven't brought anyone here in years," she said quietly, almost nervously. I smiled. "Why me?" Her eyes lingered on mine, unguarded and raw. "Because you make me feel like myself again." The distance between us dissolved as though we had both been waiting for this moment. I stepped closer, slowly, until I could feel the heat radiating off her body. My fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face, and she didn't move away. Instead, she leaned into my touch. "Elena," I whispered, barely daring to breathe. Her lips trembled, and for a heartbeat, the world stilled. Then she kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't frantic. It was slow, deliberate, filled with years of longing she had buried deep inside. Her mouth tasted of wine and unspoken truths, and when her hand slid to my waist, I felt myself melt into her. The kiss deepened, turning into something that consumed us both. I pressed her against the easel, the canvas behind her threatening to fall, but we didn't care. Her hands roamed, hesitant yet desperate, as if learning me by memory. "I shouldn't want this," she whispered against my lips. "Then don't say it," I breathed back, pulling her closer. Her body trembled, but she didn't stop. She kissed me again, harder this time, with the kind of hunger that only comes from years of silence. Every touch, every sigh between us felt like breaking free from chains neither of us had realized we were wearing. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, her forehead rested against mine. "What are we doing?" she whispered, almost laughing at the impossibility of it. "Falling," I said, without hesitation. She closed her eyes, as if surrendering to the truth she'd tried so hard to deny. And in that dimly lit studio, surrounded by forgotten canvases and abandoned dreams, we both crossed the line we could never uncross. The first touch had become the first kiss, and the first kiss was only the beginning. After that night in the studio, nothing between us was the same. We tried, for a brief moment, to pretend that it was just a kiss, just a fleeting slip of passion, but the truth lingered between us, impossible to bury. Every glance carried memory, every touch brimmed with possibility. Elena became both my escape and my obsession. We continued to meet at the cafe, but now there was a charge in the air, a current of desire so strong it felt like everyone could see it. When her hand brushed mine while passing sugar, my body would ignite. When her eyes locked with mine across the table, I forgot how to breathe. But outside those moments, the reality pressed hard. She was married. She had a life already built, and I was the secret tucked in shadows. Some nights, guilt gnawed at me, whispering that I should let her go. But then I'd remember the way she had kissed me in that studio, the way her body trembled against mine, as if she had been waiting her whole life to feel that alive, and I knew I couldn't. One Saturday, she asked me to meet her at the park, far away from the usual places. We strolled beneath the trees, leaves rustling in the summer breeze. She wore a simple dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, and I couldn't stop staring. She noticed. "You're looking at me like I'm not supposed to be yours," she teased softly. "Maybe because you're not," I replied with a half-smile. Her expression softened. She slipped her hand into mine, bold in the open air where anyone could see. My heart leapt at the risk, but the warmth of her palm against mine silenced every doubt. We sat by the lake, and she leaned her head against my shoulder. "I don't know how long I can live in two worlds," she confessed. "But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally living." I kissed the top of her head, inhaling the scent of her hair. "Then don't think about two worlds," I whispered. "Just think about this one, here, now, with me." She turned, her lips meeting mine in a kiss that was both tender and urgent, as if time itself might steal it away. In that moment, we were free. No rings, no rules, no guilt. Just two women who had found each other against all odds. But when she finally pulled away, I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. "What happens if someone finds out?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the fire between us was already burning too brightly to extinguish. And even if it destroyed us, neither of us wanted to put it out. The park became our place after that day, but soon even that wasn't enough. Desire has a way of demanding more time, more closeness, more touch. And every time we parted, I could feel the ache of absence clawing at me. One evening, Elena texted me, "I can't stop thinking about you. Come over." My heart skipped. I knew what it meant before I even got in the car. She wasn't inviting me to a cafe or a park. She was asking me into her home, into the space that belonged, at least officially, to her marriage. When she opened the door, her eyes said everything her words couldn't. She was nervous, restless, but when she pulled me inside and locked the door, all hesitation faded. The house was quiet, dimly lit, almost haunting in its stillness. "I shouldn't have asked you here," she whispered, but her hands were already on me, her body pressed too close to mean otherwise. "Do you want me to leave?" I asked, my voice trembling. Her answer was a kiss. Fierce. Desperate. The kind that steals your breath and drowns every thought. Clothes became secondary, forgotten in the pull of lips and the heat of hands. She led me to the bedroom, her wedding band cool against my skin as she traced lines down my arm. For a moment, guilt pierced the haze, but then her mouth found mine again, and guilt melted into something deeper, something unstoppable. We moved together slowly at first, as if learning each other's language, then with growing urgency, as though the world outside might shatter at any second. Her sighs filled the room, her body trembling under my touch. And when she whispered my name like a prayer, I knew there was no turning back. It wasn't just sex, it was surrender. Years of repression breaking open in her touch, her kiss, her gasp against my neck. She clung to me as if I was the only solid ground she'd ever known. And in return, I gave her everything, my hands, my mouth, my love without restraint. When it was over, we lay tangled in the sheets, the silence thick with the weight of what we had done. She traced lazy circles on my arm, her ring catching faintly in the moonlight. I feel guilty, she admitted softly, her head resting on my chest. But I also feel alive. And I don't know what that makes me. I kissed her hair, holding her tighter. It makes you human, I whispered. It makes us both human. In that moment, wrapped around each other in the fragile safety of night, we weren't bound by vows or rules. We were just two women, finally brave enough to touch the fire we'd been circling for so long. And neither of us wanted to let go. For weeks after that night, Elena and I lived in a secret world of our own making. Every stolen moment was drenched in intensity, an afternoon at the studio, a hurried kiss in her car, nights where I woke up still tasting her lips. We were addicted to each other, drunk on the thrill of being wanted so deeply. But love that hides always carries shadows. One evening, as we lay together in her bed, the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand shattered the calm. She stiffened, pulling away, glancing at the screen. I didn't need to see the name to know it was her husband. The guilt in her eyes told me everything. I should answer, she murmured, voice heavy. I nodded, though it felt like a knife in my chest. She stepped into the hall, her voice low and careful. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the difference, how she spoke to him with practiced ease, while with me, everything was raw and unfiltered. When she came back, I tried to smile, but she saw through it. This isn't fair to you, she whispered, climbing back into the bed. You deserve more than being someone's secret. Her words should have scared me. They should have made me run. But instead, I kept her face in my hands. I don't care about fair, I said softly. I care about you. Her eyes shone with tears she refused to let fall. She kissed me then, desperately, like she needed to erase the moment of doubt. And I kissed her back, just as fiercely, even though part of me knew the cracks were beginning to show. The next day at the cafe, I caught her staring at her ring, twisting it absent-mindedly. Do you love him? I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. Her eyes flicked up to mine, startled. She was quiet for a long time before she answered. I love what we used to be. I love the idea of what we built together. But him? She shook her head slightly. Not like this. Not the way I love you. The words sent chills through me. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, love. Real, undeniable love. My heart swelled, but at the same time, fear rooted deep inside me. If she loved me, truly loved me, then eventually something would have to give. I reached across the table, lacing my fingers with hers despite the risk of being seen. Then what are we going to do? I whispered. She didn't answer. But the silence said enough. We were standing at the edge of a choice, one neither of us was ready to make.
Life's meaning emerges through doing. Life's meaning does not arise from endless reflection or from waiting for the perfect answer to appear. It is discovered through action, through doing, through the lived experience of engaging with the world. We often imagine that purpose will descend on us like a revelation, but in truth, meaning is not something you find passively. It is something you build actively, step by step, choice by choice. When you wake each day and decide to create, contribute, or explore, you begin weaving threads of significance into the fabric of your existence. Without doing, even the brightest dreams remain lifeless, like seeds never planted in the soil. Think about the times in your life when you felt most alive. Was it when you were endlessly thinking about possibilities, or was it when you were immersed in the act of pursuing them? Action, no matter how small, creates experiences, and experiences are the raw material of meaning. To love, to build, to struggle, to serve, to overcome, all of these require engagement. They cannot be achieved in the abstract. When you commit yourself to doing, you place yourself in the stream of life, where growth, connection, and transformation occur. Moreover, doing allows you to test your ideas against reality. You may believe your purpose lies in one direction, but until you act, that belief remains untested. Action clarifies. It strips away illusion and replaces it with lived truth. Even failure, when embraced, becomes meaningful, because it teaches you what does not work and pushes you closer to what does. Inaction, on the other hand, leaves you paralyzed in uncertainty, trapped in a cycle of speculation without growth. Life's deepest insights are not discovered by standing still but by moving forward, even when the path is unclear. Action also connects you with others. Meaning is rarely a solitary pursuit. It emerges in the relationships we cultivate, the contributions we make, and the communities we help shape. By doing, whether creating art, solving problems, offering kindness, or pursuing goals, you leave an imprint on the world around you. Others respond, interact, and build upon your efforts, and in that exchange, purpose expands. A life lived only in thought is invisible to others, but a life of action radiates impact. Perhaps most importantly, doing empowers you to shape your own story. Every day offers opportunities to act in alignment with your values, passions, and visions. When you seize those opportunities, you transform life from something that happens to you into something you actively create. This is where true meaning is born, not in waiting for circumstances to define you, but in using your actions to define your circumstances. Each step taken is a declaration that your life has weight, direction, and intention.